Are you ready, Hank?
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Two Birds and a Third football podcast on Wednesday. We're coming back to you guys live with Hank, DJ. Unfortunately, Ricky won't be joining us, but Josh as well. And then we got a new Raider spokesperson voice over here in Dougie. So we're going to be hitting a few topics, talking about the draft as well as free agency and what our teams need moving forward. So let's get right underway here so we can
Well, real quick, guys, there's a little bit of breaking news we kind of want to jump into real quick before we do the other topics. What about the rule change you guys recently heard of?
Oh, yeah.
Recently, the rule for the catch has been modified to make it more confusing. And they have announced earlier that they're removing that language that they added beforehand, that after you have control, if you start to bobble the ball, that would cause it not to be a catch. So, i.e. the Des Bryant catch, the Calvin John or non-catch, those
James.
ones will be catches.
The
Well, as an
Calvin
example,
Johnson-
do you, as us four, what do we think about that rule? Do we think that it's appropriate to ignite that in this year's rules?
Well, I mean, I think the catch rule has been a huge topic of debate recently, especially in the last few years during the owners' meeting, and it's frustrating as a fan not knowing what a catch is, because growing up, I know that I watched a million replays, and if you can see that he caught it regardless of movement, whatever, I think we're able to judge what a real catch is. You know what I mean? And this rule kind of clarifies it, but at the same time, it's just another notch in the belt of the catch rule.
But go ahead, Hank.
I think if you, and I'm a big fan of mic'd up. If anyone saw the Super Bowl mic'd up, you could see Skeletor, the referee who the head referee of the Super Bowl, was like, yeah, this rule really sucks, and we're just going to do the best we can to, because you could argue that they're two of the most controversial catches in the Super Bowl history were in that Super Bowl.
But then again, we also have to talk about, we look at other sports, right?
Yeah.
NBA is almost just as big as NFL is right now, and their rules, we sit there and ponder our thoughts all the time with different calls. Mm-hmm. And with the NFL, it's like we sit there and question as friends while we're watching the game. We don't really have to question anymore because we're like, there's no way they'll call that. And 90% of the time, we're all right because of the rules that they've made. Now, I just hope that this rule that they put in place will actually make football better to watch. And we'll see that this year. That'll be something this year that we'll be able to talk about as friends, and also people that love the game, love the sport. We just want football to be football. And the more rules that are being made, we also feel like, shit, is it still football? It's good. It's good that we're having these rules in place, but at the same time, I understand that fans are worried, thinking, is it still the same game?
Well, it's not just the number of rules. It's just that the rules are not always concrete, and there are so many interpretations of the rules. It's not that you can have a lot of rules, but it's as long as you simplify it so that it's consistent enough for everybody to follow. Yeah.
Right. And it really doesn't matter what we all think. It really comes down to the referees, and it comes down to the commissioner telling us, oh, this guy's getting fined for this. This guy's getting fined. And you bring that to other sports. 25 years ago, some of the shit that was laid down, excuse my language, but some of that stuff that was laid down was really hearsay. Now we saw that it's on film. There's every angle for every play. And so it's like, we just hope that the rules that are placed now help the game to be better, more people to watch, more people to have, good time watching the game.
And also, I think another way to look at this would be, has the replay and all these, never before seen by human eye pictures we are getting now, that would make a lot of the rules that we'd have previously convoluted because of all the different angles, like Dougie had mentioned, and all these different views that we have of this. So have we kind of now that we're taking away the rules, are we going to draw back on what we do with the replay? Because the replay is always going to stay.
Yeah.
The rules change, but the picture's never going to change.
They're not. They're gonna
let's also take a pause in this, and let's talk about some interesting NFL news right now. Before we break down this, let's talk about some interesting NFL stuff that came out this week that we can all talk about, especially being diverse teams, diverse members.
Yeah, I think we're going to move on from that right now, Hank, and we're going to kind of cover what's going on in the free agency market and what could be impacting the draft with some teams' moves right now. And there's been a lot going on. I mean, teams that we thought were sitting in the back have made some huge free agency moves, and some other teams have made some big draft moves. I mean, we're going to definitely talk about the Jets moving up. What do you think that means for the rest of the top 10 moving forward?
I think that what it means is the fact that the Jets are the Jets moved up to number 3. They're definitely picking a quarterback. And I've actually heard news that said that the Jets might even move away from Teddy Bridgewater as it is. He might just be on the team. He might not be on the team for the whole time. But
I think that's because they're unsure, and they also have some good things coming to improve their team. No one really knows how Bridgewater is going to come back. But what I saw from him before he got injured, I think a lot of NFL fans were excited about him. And I think that's what excited so many people about the Vikings' year last year is they were all surprised that they had the year they did without Bridgewater.
Didn't the Bills trade up to the 4th pick too?
They're trying to.
I don't think that has been inked yet. They are definitely in pursuit. So, I would say this as a Cleveland Browns fan. I don't think the Browns are going to take a quarterback number 1 overall, which is definitely going to – I think these other teams know that. But I think we have to take Barkley first and then see what all transpires. But in the same breath, if all these other people are going to take quarterbacks, maybe Josh Allen will be gone really soon. And maybe the Browns do make a move at quarterback number 1, and then everybody else follows suit, and then we have the number 4 pick to get Saquon.
So, DJ, just to ask you on your same topic on that, do you think that the reason that they wouldn't take the first pick quarterback is because they failed so many times with that? And I don't mean that in a bad way whatsoever.
How could you not mean it in a bad way?
No, I'm just asking you on that. Is that because they really do? People get excited because they're like, wait, I see a spark. And then drama happens within the player. I mean, think about it. With Johnny Football, more of that wasn't with coaching. It was more of the player itself. So, I mean, there's a lot. There's so much. What's the word I'm looking for? There's so much confidence that a GM, that a coach is putting in a player to run a football team. Because if you look at all of the teams that are really, really being successful in the past years, last 2 or 3 years, it starts with the quarterback and the captain of the defense.
I think what the Browns have done this offseason, signing Tyrod Taylor or trading for Tyrod Taylor, is that he's at least a good stopgap in the sense that he doesn't turn the ball over. I think he was 57 and 14 for touchdown interception ratio, and that's what you want as the Browns, because the Browns lost so many games throwing interceptions. You keep the first pick, and I think you go Saquon, because I don't see any of these quarterbacks being a number 1 day starter. And I don't think the Browns should do that, because they've tried that so many times in the past of getting a quarterback that they think they can throw in there day 1 and just start. I think finally they need to get a guy. Don't trade away the 4th pick and get a guy like Josh Rosen.
Right, absolutely. And Hank, I want to ask you, what do you think are the top 5 for you of free agency pickups that'll change a team's environment, change a team's success rate?
That have already been signed or have not been signed?
Yeah, that have been signed, either or. Basically been signed first, and then if to be signed, what would that make for the team?
Well, Kirk Cousins, obviously signed by the Minnesota Vikings. I think
they
widely overpaid for him, but he's a free agent signing for them nonetheless. Jordy Nelson, who was signed by the Raiders after they ditched Michael Crabtree, he'll be an impact free agent signing for them. The Ravens signed Michael Crabtree themselves, so that'll be a decent move for them.
Within a day too, and then continue
within the same day, and then, gosh, a lot of these guys have been these free agent signings. Like I would say free agent signings, but they weren't free agent signings. They were more like trades. But
I also want to bring up too that me being a Raiders fan, I'm not trying to push that 100%, but I also want to tell you guys that we got Doug Martin, right, as a backup running back, and what the Raiders were able to do is they restructured Marshawn Lynch's contract, and he was 100% okay with that, which is big for him, I believe, and I kind of take that back to the other side of the bay of the Niners getting who they picked up, Sherman, right, and there's a lot of talk about that, but what I've mentioned, and I also got a bunch of feedback from commenting on that on Comcast Sportsnet, is that, he was he talked a lot of smack as a Seahawks player, but I think a lot of San Francisco fans would love him to come back and do the same thing or even more on that team. And I think because of his injury, the Niners were able to get him on a lower paid contract. So I think that's only good news, right, for them.
The issue is the fact that he might not play until October.
Right, and they were okay with that.
Achilles, which is like one of the worst injuries you can have.
DJ, what do you think on that concept?
On the whole Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman and the whole free agency in the last week that you've seen. Richard Sherman, I had the chance to listen on 95.7 The Game, and I could just tell the confidence in him. He's always had the confidence. I can only see this being a positive. They're only paying him out $33 million over 3 years. That's really not. That's not a lot.
And is that all guaranteed?
It's not all guaranteed. He actually went in on himself. He doesn't have an agent, so he didn't have to pay any agent bonus signings. That's probably why he took a lower deals, because he didn't have anyone on the outside to pay.
And that doesn't happen often.
No, he doesn't do that. No one does that.
He's smart.
But he's smart. He's a tough guy. He's got the Compton attitude with the Stanford education. That's a pretty potent combination. Now, the Achilles is a very, very touchy injury when it comes to a defensive back. So you look at the timetable of return. He says he's going to be back between May and June. Now, he has to, because he has to pass the physical in order to get to, or basically to play in training camp. And once he does that, they will then move him to the next part of his contract.
He won't make it to training camp.
What was that?
He won't make it to training camp. He's got a ruptured Achilles.
No.
That kind of injury takes more than a year to come back from.
Hey, now this is all barring that he is an actual healthy component to the defense. So
because he has been talking like he is ready for this.
Exactly. You got to believe the confidence, and if this
this is Richard
basically
Sherman. This is Richard Sherman.
Hey. This is Richard Sherman. He's done a lot of talking, but he's done a lot of backing up too. Okay, so he's built up a little bit of house credit, from that whole thing with the Niners and Crabtree itself. I don't say I completely believe him, but if there's any guy that could come back, like Adrian Peterson, I have to think Sherman would be that guy.
Hey, DJ,
he did walk off the field with the ruptured Achilles.
And you know what? That helps for the other side of the bay with Jordy Nelson. He has the same kind of injury components that would worry you as a Raider fan, because you let go of one of our favorite receivers as a fan, Michael Crabtree. You're not talking about too much of a difference money-wise. DJ. So now you have Amari Cooper, who he's been comfortable with Crabtree his whole career, and now he's stepping up to someone that he's never really played with. He knows him as a player, but then we don't have Cordell Patterson anymore. So who is your number 3, Hank, in your opinion on the Raiders? So if it comes down to terms, and we think that we could have Amari Cooper on the left, or Jordy, either way, vice versa, Jordy Nelson as number 2, or I would expect that Cooper would be number 1.
Cooper,
obviously. Who would be that number 3 in your opinion?
Cooper's not going to be a number 1.
You think he's going to be number 2 to Jordy?
We saw him this last season. He's
But
not capable
but
right
I
now
think
of being a
that
number one.
who has you think about better hands? I think that
Jordy
Jordy
has
Nelson
better
had a
hands.
quarterback that he knew was going to throw in the right spot, right? I saw Carr throw a lot of passes last year that I was surprised that he didn't hit them in the right position. I was surprised.
But he was playing through back injury,
But the thing is
Go ahead,
that
Hank.
Amari Cooper has a case of the dropsies. A huge case
Yeah,
of the dropsies.
he's been dropping balls.
Well, Crabtree did that with the Niners, and then look at him with the Raiders, right? As well.
Crabtree plays who he wants to play for. That's the thing here. As for the Raiders, I think they're not going to have a clear-cut number one because you're not going to have Amari Cooper come out of the shadow. He's just going to stay over there and make a little bit of noise. And then you have Jordy Nelson, who's an older, just coming off an ACL injury. Again, like he's had 2 ACL injuries in the past, 3 years? So you have a pretty, I would say,
I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders.
offense.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders didn't draft somebody.
No, they have to. But the thing is, that's not good. That's not going to be a clear-cut number one. There's no clear-cut like Calvin Johnson coming out.
But yeah, even
Absolutely.
if
I think you have to
draft a guy like Calvin Ridley, I mean, he's not Amari Cooper.
But then you want to look at his stats too. Last year, no one expected Cook to do what he did last year for the Raiders, and he did that. And I really think John Gruden, because of the way he plays his offense, and I'm talking about when he was A grade for the teams that he was coaching prior. I think that tight end wise, he's a strong. He wants a number one player to be.
You know what? If there's anything that happens, you're going to notice that the Raiders will probably either draft a high tight end, like high on the board, either first or second round.
I don't think so.
Maybe second round. I think because he wants a tight end. Tight end is very, very
And
key.
why would you not?
Why tight end?
Why would you not want Cook to be that number one with what he did for the Raiders last year, with no one even expecting him to do what he did last year?
I'd say give him a shot in training camp and have him battle it out.
Absolutely, I agree.
Draft a tight
But
end.
I would draft a tight end
third.
fourth or fifth round, to be honest with you, because think about it. Look at the most strongest tight ends in the game right now. They're not first or second draft picks. They're not. You know, there's not a lot of teams that go out and draft a tight end first or second round.
Zach Ertz was a second-round draft pick.
Right, and then look how long it took him to place himself as a top 10 tight end.
He does have a
2
point.
years. 2 years.
Yeah, 3 years. And that's why I understand why he's saying that, like, I think for the Raiders, their first and foremost need is on the defensive side. And so I see them going tight end. And we don't know what John Gruden's going to do for the offense yet. $10 million man. We'll see what happens. But, I mean, I don't see the Raiders trading out of the top 10. I think that they definitely need to keep that top 10 pick. And I think they need to go with a linebacker like Jermaine what's his name, Hank?
Well, we have to question that because Whitehead was placed on the Raiders. We have to watch that. You got Gilchrist, right? Mack, they expect to come back strong. Plus, John Gruden, yeah, he does run an offense very well, but he also knows how to run a defense. And, you know, I really expect, you know, we were really hoping that, you know, once the Dolphins released
Ndamukong Suh,
we were hoping that he would come to the Raiders, but I think they canceled that because, honestly, the Raiders don't want to have to afford that, and we also picked up somebody else as well.
You don't want,
so
you don't want Suh.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't touch Suh with a 10-foot pole.
Nope. No, guys, damaged goods.
Well, with the money we'd have to spend on him, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
He still can play at a very high level, but he's going to cause, like,
He's
it could be locker room stuff. It could be a number of
He's
things.
very selfish, and that's one of the things that has always plagued him throughout the years in the NFL is that he really he's always been that selfish guy. So you can't count on him being a team player.
Then again, Crabtree was that guy when we picked him up, and he proved a lot. But at the same time, that takes a coach to do that. I really do think, and I think Crabtree really saw it coming, to be honest. And I think that's why he you know, first visit he took was the Ravens, and the first visit he signed.
He also mentioned that in a lot of things, I showed DJ this, that he said that even as a kid, he always wanted to be a Baltimore Raven. So I think as soon as he got released, he kind of saw that is a potential landing spot. Now, I'll say right now, I mean, the Ravens, that was one of their biggest needs going into the offseason is the wide receiver core because they did not perform where they should. And
I agree with that. But Hank, you know best because you're Eagles till the day you die. What do you think about the Eagles offseason so far after winning the Super Bowl?
I think the offseason has gone pretty well to plan. They've gotten rid of the players that they really didn't need, and they currently have a few players and they got a few players via trade and free agency that they could really use. I mean,
let's talk about that.
Cut ties with Brent Selleck a little bit, or just because he's probably going to retire. I mean, I think they kind of did it the wrong way, but I mean, he's a guy who has been in the league for 10 or 11 years and probably shouldn't retire anyway. They couldn't re-sign Trey Burton. He now plays for the Bears. They traded for Michael Bennett, who, he'll be a part of the rotation. I don't really like him personally. I hate to bring this word around, but he's kind of a thug. And
Well, then why do you think that they signed him per se?
Well, they traded for him in order to bulk in the defensive line. He'll be a part of the rotation.
The system that Philly runs is like an interchangeable defensive line where you need multiple guys who are playmakers to rotate in throughout the game, that's how Philly plays their defense.
They traded Torrey Smith for I think something Conley on the Panthers. So they basically traded away a lot of cap money for a very little amount of cap money, and then I'm blanking on a few things, but I really do think that it's been a decent offseason, and if we're Eagles fans, we trust in Howie Roseman now. We've trusted the process. And of course,
as Eagles fans, you guys trusting the process hasn't helped you too much. I mean, I gotta bring that up to the point, right?
It's because before I didn't trust the process.
I think it can really help. I think a thuggish person on the defense can really, really help you. We got one of my favorite, guys that I like to talk about football with, David Bailey, that I'm sitting next to. He's trusted a lot of different offseason moves with the Browns.
Trusting is a very I've dealt with.
Trusting is very big.
Anything the Browns have done.
So let's bring up your Browns offseason so far.
I said the same thing last year at this point. I was all stoked, ready for the draft, ready to go, And, the past 2 years, they've kind of, jacked me around with my number one picks. If I was the GM the past 3 years, we would have almost a state-of-the-art offense, and I wouldn't run it. I'm just talking about picking in the draft. I wouldn't actually coach it. I think we could have had a top 5 quarterback. We could have had a great running back, a lot of other stuff. But in draft history, we haven't done so well. I think we have a football-minded guy, John Dorsey from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's ready to go. He's about to take over. He's already showed he could fill pieces without just going to the draft. This guy made moves that a lot of GMs in past Browns history have not made moves like this.
Now, D, let me ask you a question. Because you guys haven't really made a stance on free agent signing, do you think that they're going to have a crazy, or maybe that's not the term to use, but do you think they're going to have a big stance on draft this year? Do you think they're going to make a lot of draft moves this year?
No, I say they're going to stick with a lot of picks they've already done. I don't think they need to make too many more moves. They've already acquired some draft picks later on, and they're conditional. Maybe a 7th or a 6th round. Again, we have a multitude of picks. We have 6 picks in the first 3 rounds in this year's draft.
Right.
If we want to make some moves, we can always make some moves later on, maybe in the 3rd round if we need to just dealt a pick out.
Trades will happen more than
with this free agent class that we have signed. It's basically the best bang that you could get for your buck. We got Tyrod at a deal. He's going to be our stopgap quarterback, and he wants to play. And, Hugh Jackson loves a mobile quarterback that is very accurate. And like we mentioned before, this man does not throw interceptions, which the Browns have led the league in the past 2 years with interceptions from a quarterback.
So does that mean most moves are going to be on the offensive line?
No. We're going defense. We need to stop that young defense that we had. What we did is we acquired some veteran defensive backs, which could help bolster our young defensive backfield and our safeties. I think that our linebacking core is right there. Joe Schobert is one of the most underrated linebackers and on that line, and we have Kirksey who's going to run that. And we have Jamie Collins and that first overall pick from last year, Myles Garrett. Yeah. That young defense might be a top 5 defense when it's all said and done.
You know what? I can't say I can agree with that in most states, but what do you think about where do you go with the offensive line? Because I think that Tyrod Taylor can't do what Tyrod Taylor does without a little bit of improvement, at least a little bit of improvement.
Now, I will tell you this, the offensive line of the Cleveland Browns is one of the most highly paid offensive lines. Now, considering that they had a lot of injuries to the offensive line last year, i.e. Joe Thomas, Greco, there's a lot of improvement that will be made just by having those players healthy.
Yeah. So do they keep that offensive line?
Oh, yeah, I would keep that. They signed that offensive line to be together for at least 2 to 3 years.
Do you think they make some picks in the draft in the first 3 rounds?
We need to have
in the first 3, possibly.
Maybe. I see more defensive and offensive help when it comes to the first 3 rounds. You're going to get a little bit more defense. Now, offensive line, we will try to probably fill a veteran offensive lineman at that left tackle position. And then maybe next year in the draft, we go to try to find Joe Thomas' replacement, even though that might be impossible.
Okay. And Hank, I also wanted to ask you about, what do you think about the Dolphins with the power rankings right now? I mean, they were a fun team to watch last year, in my opinion. So to see the power rankings right now and to see what most respectable, NFL ranking, people, they're saying that the Dolphins won't be anything to watch next year. What's your opinion on that?
They're the new Browns.
Power rankings are stupid.
I agree, but I just want to know your opinion on I know they've lost a lot of people in the offseason so far, but I just want to know what do you think is going to go, what's going to happen for the Dolphins before August comes?
Hopefully for them and hopefully for their sake, Ryan Tannehill comes back, because I don't think that they want to have another season of Jay Cutler and his very uninspiring type of football.
I need some more Smoking Jay. I'm sorry. I can't get enough of it.
But,
I think I need another year.
But the thing is that most people are touting Adam Gase as being the next Chimp Kelly.
And I also want to bring up to you, Hank, and I know there's not too much to talk Dolphins-wise, but for the Patriots-wise, I haven't seen anything but additions, basically, for the team. So I think for any AFC team, you got to be making placements for the draft and also your signings free agent-wise to compete with them. I mean, and that might be something that going to be talked about. No one's really going to know until August comes, in my opinion. But I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
It's not going to be whether you can compete with the Patriots. I think the Dolphins have proven that they're the one team from that division who can actually beat the Patriots on a consistent level. It's more of being able to beat the other teams. I think that one of the things people need to understand is that, yes, you play the teams in your division more often than any other team that is on your schedule, but really it's not that difficult to beat the Patriots in some respects. What it is very difficult to do is to hold on.
Doesn't make you a Patriots.
No, hold on.
No, hey, and we agree with you, hey. But we also want to say is that we see all these moves from a lot of these teams, free agent signings, people getting ready for the draft. You don't see almost any drops from the Patriots roster. Plus, they've signed like a lot of Raider fans, because I follow them, thoroughly throughout the week.
Yeah.
For us to get Cordell Patterson to the Patriots, not only do I think like, damn, just their higher ups getting Cordell Patterson, it's going to be their number 3 wide receiver, and for have him as a slant receiver, that's what I was hoping the Raiders would have. For them to give him up for late draft picks, I'm thinking, is the draft this year that good that we can get the Raiders, even the Eagles, even the Dolphins? Can we get? Is there a lot of slant receivers that are ready for the draft?
Now, Cordell Patterson is giving him the title slant receiver. I think is very gracious. He is a punt returner / kickoff returner on the Raiders.
The ball.
Not a big,
Yes, kind of. He's not as good a history. Listen, I won't put too much stock into Cordell Patterson.
I mean, Tom Brady's throwing to him.
I understand, but it doesn't matter if he has the dropsies, bro.
The point.
I mean,
the point I was trying to make was that it's not that difficult to beat the Patriots, especially if you're the Dolphins. What it's difficult to do is to consistently be able to beat the rest of the teams on your schedule. That was the point I was trying to. I wasn't saying that like it's not difficult to beat the Patriots, but the fact of the matter is that the Patriots are going to win 11 to 14 games in a season. You have to be able to keep up with that.
Yeah, and the Dolphins may win 6 this year.
It all depends. I think that with under Jay Cutler, you didn't have a quarterback who was that inspiring. Ryan Tannehill definitely puts up better statistics, and they've got Kenyon Drake, who's going to be pretty good, and they've got a 3rd-round draft pick from the Eagles. I think that the Dolphins can be a really good team. It's just that they've become a snake-bitten franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. They just kind of they kind of do have that bad luck going. They signed Sue to that large deal. They signed Wallace. Remember back in the day, they had Wallace who signed a giant deal out of Pittsburgh for, and then he just didn't produce. And I just kind of feel like these Dolphins just kind of get, like you said, snake bitten by this kind of contract.
If the Miami Dolphins are a snake bitten franchise, what does that make the Browns? Were they just like?
Well, like I said,
the Browns are a factory of sadness.
I think. Hold on, Hank. I don't think that you can really define that until July, even August, because of the fact that a lot of these teams are making the plays they have. Some of the fans are gonna be like, "What's going on?" It's because of they're getting ready for the draft, right? I mean, we've seen so many teams where like, "What's going on?" until the draft takes place. I mean, some of these free agents are still going to be around, right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't put faith in some of these free agents because, injuries or because of that. I mean, think about Crabtree with the Raiders. People weren't fighting for him when the Raiders signed him. I mean, it wasn't a big fight, right? And we talk about the Dolphins. A good friend of all of ours, he's worried because why are we getting rid of all these people? Well, the Dolphins are going to have some money. They're going to have a good draft, I believe. But then it's about coaching when it comes to that, right? You can have the best 4 college players. When it comes down to coaching, what's going to come, right? So I think that's for people who know football, who are very knowledgeable about football, they're going to be able to look at the whole schedule. I want to bring to fans that don't know too much about what's going to come to draft, where their teams are in the position right now with what's happening with free agency.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you can complain about the fact that your team isn't bringing in any free agents, but I have always been a proponent of building through the draft. Teams that build primarily through free agency are the teams that plain and simply don't know how to draft, and those teams will and unless those teams can draft players. Now it's a different story if you're a team that has a lot of cap space, but if your team cannot draft properly, then they will not have a foreseeable future. I mean, the one team that you look at that's the exception was the 2015 Denver Broncos.
Yeah, those are built together through free agency almost. But the defense, they got Von Miller through the draft.
So hold on real quick, DJ. I'm going to cut you off for 1 second, and he's going to continue. I just got some breaking news that over the course of the 5 transactions that the Dolphins created, they've also created $46.7 million in cap space. So that's just something for fans to know. Also, free agency is not over, and we got the draft.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, you know, that's all great and all, but if you go ahead and sign another defensive lineman to almost a $100 million contract, like you did with the Dominican Sue, it doesn't no, I'm just saying that what I'm saying is that a franchise, and trust me, I know from experience, a franchise with a terrible GM who gives money into bad places, it gives bad contracts that are front loaded, or you know, it's just that's what happens to perpetually bad franchises, that they keep digging themselves into contracts and to money that's owed to different places and not putting it into the right way. Now, as far as if it's built to the draft is concerned, I completely agree with you, Hank. But I also think that you need a steady core of veterans on the outside to keep that young nucleus going around. So I think just as important as is going to the draft, you have to have a GM that's conscious enough to go ahead and sign a wily veteran that will be able to pass on what he knows to the NFL.
But it's
now,
not,
in your opinion, DJ, do you think that you wait to judge the Browns and the Dolphins until August? When
you can't judge anybody. You can't even judge how well they did in the draft until the end of the year.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I'm talking for you. Are you worried about your team right now, or are you going to wait?
I'm not worried because we're doing better already than we were last year. Because we didn't win a game last year.
And Hank, for you, I mean, you got the Super Bowl winning team. You're not worried at all with the offseason you guys have had this far?
Not really. It's
not really.
What's gonna happen? I mean, it's just that I'm not gonna question the front office because they've deserved for me not to question them.
This is Hank that is not going to question the front office.
He had no idea what was going to happen.
No, but this is coming from Hank, who hates his own team. He actually likes the Giants more than he does.
Even Josh. Josh, let's talk about. You didn't think your team was going to have the year it did last year. Are you excited with what's been happening with the Ravens this offseason?
I mean, the Ravens are always stuck in this horrible bind where they build up their draft picks.
Let's throw away the past, though, and just let's make them a new team for this offseason. What do you feel with that?
I think that we absolutely needed Crabtree because the receiver core needs to be completely upgraded. I'm glad that we dropped Jeremy Maclin. I think that our tight ends need a lot of help. I think that our offensive line is pretty solid, minus the center position, which could be pretty horrible. So we're kind of on the precipice there of either good or bad, because we lost Jensen, because once again, like I said, the Ravens always train up these guys that are 4th, 5th, 6th round picks, and then they end up getting max deals. I mean, you look at Kelechi Osemele, who became the highest paid guard in the NFL 3 years ago. Last year, you had Rick Wagner, who went to the Detroit Lions, who was the highest paid right tackle. And then you have Brian Jensen this year, who goes over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because he's the highest paid center. The Ravens cannot afford these guys who are getting paid max contracts.
So you're the ace.
I still have the same faith in Flacco that I did 3 years ago.
I mean, I have faith.
And so I think that if he has a decent offensive line, and I think if he has the wide receiver core they're building, plus the draft is going to change a little bit, but I think that if Flacco has more confidence in his line and his wide receiver core,
I think he's lost some confidence after the hit from Kiko.
I mean, that's
Flacco played.
Vernon Davis after that hit from Cam Chancellor was not the same tight end.
Flacco missed the entire preseason for back injury. I think the Ravens are going to be like Baltimore always is, and they're never going to be bad. I don't think that the Ravens organization is ever going to be bad. I think that Eric DeCosta kind of taking the reins from Ozzie Newsome this year. I think that they've made the moves they need to make. You have to worry about cap space, which the Ravens always have to worry about. But moving forward, I think that we have a very good nucleus of the things you need. I think that we just got Crabtree, who's a chain-moving wide receiver. We have a young, hungry running back in Alex Collins, who got the 3rd most rushing yards in the league last year after not starting the first 5 games and being signed from Cleveland or from Seattle's practice squad. And you have Joe Flacco being healthy. I think that you have Marshall Yonda, Alex Lewis coming back.
A better chance of hitting the playoffs.
I think absolutely.
I think the biggest.
And Hank, let me ask you, where do you think your team falls in odds to win it again?
Well, before I say that, I think that the biggest anchor for the Baltimore Ravens is Marty Moronweg.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what he is. You will never be above average or anything above average with that guy as your offensive coordinator. Anyway, what do I think about the Eagles' chances of going back to the Super Bowl? Is that what you asked?
Going back to the Super Bowl. Not even winning it, just going back.
I don't know. I don't know odds very much, but I do.
My point on that is that I talked to you throughout the year last year, and I noticed that it was just more of a, oh wow, this is actually happening. Oh wow, this is actually happening.
Yeah.
Plus, me and David had talked a lot about we were ready. Oh, the Browns are gonna win this game. The Browns are gonna win this game. You can't put that on the coordination of the offense or the defense. At the same time, I was so surprised to see the Eagles, what they did in the playoffs. It was an exciting playoff experience. I had a great time watching the playoffs this year. But what I'd like to say for all four of us is that, do I know what's going to happen with my team? Absolutely not. You got a coach that has been out of the game for a while that's gonna coach my team. For the Eagles' sake, I haven't seen too much. I don't know what's going to happen. You know what? That's a good thing. You see the Patriots, when they win the Super Bowl, they don't change too much. Even this year in the offseason, they're not changed too much. I've seen some additions. I haven't seen too many releases from their team. The Ravens are having a pretty good offseason from what I see. And I think most teams are doing a lot, but I think that the Niners and the Raiders especially, maybe it's because of where I am, but I've seen a lot from both teams, them making changes, because of the Niners had a very strong last 6 games for sure. So
yeah, I think
if you guys want to bring up Richard Sherman at all,
I think with the Eagles, I think the Eagles definitely have a good chance of making the playoffs. I look towards 10-6, 11-5, depending on when Carson Wentz comes back and whatever is gonna go along with that. I don't see the Eagles going back to the Super Bowl this year because you've got a lot of question marks when it comes to their offensive coordinator and their quarterback's coach. Their offense you never know, their offense might be a little bit different than it was last year. But I think that this might be an off year when it comes to Super Bowls. But I think that they will go back to contending in 2019, definitely.
DJ?
Vince? Yeah.
I don't see them missing a beat. I think they're going to get rich with the trade for Nick Foles halfway through the season. I think that you're going to have Carson Wentz come back with a freaking chip on his shoulder that he didn't get to lead his team to the damn Super Bowl. I say Carson Wentz becomes the MVP of the league, not only hoist the Lombardi Trophy, but the MVP for winning the Super Bowl 2 times in a row. And yes, Hank, I know you don't believe this will ever happen, but did you ever conceive in your mind that Nick Foles would win the MVP of the Super Bowl and win you your first Lombardi Trophy? I asked you that
I did.
Because I know you did not see that coming.
I did.
I think you did. I think you did too. No, I think you did.
Back in 2013.
Not beginning of the season.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Hold on.
This year.
Back in 2013, I saw it in sometime in the future, but I didn't think it was going to happen the way that it happened. You know?
You saw Nick Foles win the Super Bowl MVP.
So have we, has the offensive line changed in this offseason for the Eagles?
No.
That you've seen?
No. There's no change.
So, I mean, I honestly think agree with you that Wentz is going to come back strong. I don't think he's going to come back with a chip on his shoulder.
Besides,
I
don't know if
like, fuck it, I want to be the one doing it.
I don't know if Jason Peters is going to be our left tackle. It's either going to be Jason Peters or we're going to get rid of Jason Peters and it's going to be Big V.
Yeah, and if you're any type of competitor and any person that is barred from playing because of injury, and then your team goes out and wins the Super Bowl without you, that is an automatic chip on your shoulder.
Now that Nick Foles hasn't been traded though, is Wentz and Foles competing in the offseason, or does it just go straight to Wentz?
I think Wentz knows his place, and
it's a known thing that they're not competing. Foles knows that he's the backup.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a report that said, and it's just a report. I've never actually heard him say or seen or heard him say anything, but he has actually said that he has actually said that he wants to stay in Philadelphia, even if it has to be as a backup. You guys there?
Yes, 1 second.
Yeah, he said that he would want to play even if he has to be a backup. And, you know, it's something that you can really respect from him. Because 2 years ago, he wanted to, like, leave football. He wanted to retire fully. So I definitely have a lot of respect for him when it comes to, hey, you know, I don't actually care what happens to me. But one thing I do want to happen is I want Nick Foles. More than what happens to my own team, I want Nick Foles to go. I want whatever happens to Nick Foles to be what he wants to do, and not what, you know.
Well, we wish that football worked that way, but at the same time, I think in the first 4 weeks for the Eagles season, we're gonna find out what's gonna happen with.
He's going to Buffalo.
I mean, that's what Buffalo fans would hope for.
No, it isn't, because his career would be over if he went there.
Isn't it?
Well, that's not his choice, right?
It should. I want it to be his choice because I feel like the organization owes him that much to the point where if they were like, hey Nick, there are 3 teams that want you for similar deals. Where do you want to go? And he was like, I'd rather go here instead of there. You know?
Well, he's not Terrell, and
he can do that because he won.
You know, I think that you're going to end up seeing him go to Buffalo. Where else are you going to see him going? You think about it, Arizona.
Buffalo's going to get. Buffalo's going to get.
Our point is,
Buffalo's going to get a quarterback.
We all agree on that he's not going to be a backup quarterback for the Eagles all season next year.
You will not be an Eagle all season.
Unless Carson Wentz does not come back like he thought he would. Then again, are they going to wait that long to see?
They might just keep him. Who knows? I mean,
they would because Carson Wentz is the quote unquote future of the organization. They traded up so much. Well, not so much, but they traded up to get him. They used a lot of.
But that also shows what solid of a team that you guys have. That whether it's your franchise quarterback or your backup quarterback, they have faith in both, right? And I think that's a lot of teams that were competing last year are trying to get in that aspect of even if we don't have our starting quarterback playing, we're okay with our backup quarterback starting for the team.
Yeah. And I think that either way either way the issue will work itself out. That's what I see.
I think the same. Do you guys have anything else you guys want to talk about? I think we covered a ton of information today.
Well, let's hit Richard Sherman real quick on the factor of, do we think that he's number 1 for the Niners?
No.
Do we think that he's going to be is he going to have a captain on his jersey starting the season?
They don't have C's for the
They don't have
the
a
Niners.
captain thing for the Niners.
I will tell you this: he will be an influence on the young DBs there. That's just is what it is. He knows the X's and O's and how to guard somebody in different techniques. So he's going to be an impact player. Maybe not so much on the field as soon as we think. But I see him helping just being in the locker room and keeping keeping everybody level. And
I think he'll be a good. I think in a sense he'll be a good teammate. But on the other side of the spectrum, I really don't. I don't like bringing in free agent cornerbacks because I feel like as an Eagles fan, I've suffered with the Nnamdi Asomugha's of the world and the Byron Maxwell's of the world. So I'm not a big fan
and then with Ndamukong Suh, him canceling the visit with the Raiders, obviously I think it's because we can't afford him. Also because we signed Emmanuel Lamar. Do you think that he's going to hit a team that's ready to compete, or do you think he's just going to take the biggest contract he can get? Hank?
I think he'll get the biggest contract he can get. He's a pretty selfish player.
What he did with Miami, he didn't want to go to. He went from Detroit to Miami, So I mean, this guy's just in it for the money.
Well, yeah, I mean, after an hour of the news coming online that he canceled his visit with the Raiders, after 15 minutes of those news, we got news that Emmanuel Lemur was signed to the Raiders. And we're talking about, defensive line to linebacker standpoint. I think that shows that the Niners are confident in their D-line. The Raiders in their D-line. And I think the only reason that being said is that what did we see from the Raiders defense? It was a lot of breakdown on the DB standpoint. Also, I think that's why they signed Gilchrist for a safety aspect. But, I saw a lot of Gilchrist last year on the Texans. There was a lot of plays that were like, where was Gilchrist? And that's what I saw. I think that's why the Raiders got him for what they got him for. And then is John Gruden more of a offensive coach, or do you think he's more of? I would say he's what we've seen. He is more of an offensive coach, but I think he's really going to show this year.
Change the culture,
right? And we'll see a lot of that in the draft. But that's another question I want to ask you.
He's purely an offensive coach. He's an offensive.
He's a former receivers coach. I think he is an offensive coach, but he portrays the toughness that you. He portrays the toughness that you would want to see in any kind of coach. The issue that I have with John Gruden is he's been out of coaching for 10 years.
He has not been out of coaching. This guy has been inside every single locker room.
I'm not saying that he won't be good. I'm just saying he's been out of coaching for a while, and the last stint he had in coaching, he really was not that impressive at all. I mean, besides one Super Bowl.
I mean, what I remember as a kid for sure is that I've always been a huge Raider fan, but I saw him excel more than anything with the Raiders, and then every Raider fan, especially fans, were so shocked that he went to Tampa Bay.
No, he got traded.
Then the Raiders easy to the Super Bowl. And they get clowned by Tampa Bay because John Gruden knew everything, defense, offense, inside and out of the Raiders, and that was easily shown. So as David shows that, he's always been an offensive guy. Yes, I agree, but $100 million contract. So I think that shows that, yes, they know that he'll be there offensively, and that's what the Raiders need. I really think is that they need someone to step up offensively, but they also believe in him defensively. Well, they wouldn't have gave him the contract they did.
Because he knows people in the game that will come to coach for him. So he could go get Bill
Callahan.
Bill Callahan was an defensive coordinator when he had great sets. So he had his offense going and his defense. Now, John Gruden, they paid him because he knows a lot of people. And they paid him because, listen, can I just say this about John Gruden's career? Dougie's right. He had his best stint with Oakland. He went, obviously, and won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. But after that Super Bowl, he didn't want to be in Tampa Bay. His heart was with the Raiders. He got traded to Tampa Bay. He didn't want to be there. No.
He didn't. He wanted to be there.
He's very comfortable going to Tampa Bay.
No, because he was going against Al Davis, and he wanted to stick it to the guy because he traded him.
But that shows that how good of a coach he is, in my opinion.
But he had a bad stint. He went like less than 500 with Tampa Bay. What I'm saying, to your credit, Doug, is that he's going to do well because he's going back to Oakland. He feels renewed, like the river of youth, the fountain of youth, has splashed over him.
Well, they gave him enough money to be that.
Well,
I mean, what is he? The highest paid coach?
Yeah, but he's not going to get out of the gig that he had right there without immense security. So you're looking at a guy that is going to come in and, like everybody said here, change the culture, and you're going to see this for the better. The Raiders are going to see this for the better. I wouldn't fret too much about the money. It ain't your money that's going to him. It's not.
Absolutely.
But yeah, guys, I think that was a great podcast that we had. Dougie, thank you so much for stopping by here, and please give us more of your Raiders knowledge that you have, because they seem to be up to date every minute we talk to. So we do appreciate you stopping by here today.
Hey, 2 birds in 1 stone, and then a team that's unknown. Let's bring that to the table. I think that we have a lot of knowledge of that, and I think that football fans They don't know. That's the cool thing about football right now, especially, is that we don't know what's going to happen next, especially with the draft coming. You could have the best offseason ever with free agency. That really doesn't mean anything in the NFL.
You don't win in March.
Exactly, and Josh brought that as a good point, and that's why David's so optimistic. He's a Cleveland Browns fan. He's going to stay a Cleveland Browns fan, and I hope that the draft brings something, but then it comes down to coaching after that. So we have a lot to talk about throughout the offseason, especially when it comes to draft time. But I got to disagree with you, Hank, on the Eagles. I do think they'll be a competitor. That's why they're not making as many moves as that you would see, but. I'm really interested to see what happens with Foles as a backup quarterback. You got teams that would love to have Foles under their center. You really would.
If you're going to come on the podcast more with Hank, you're going to come to find out he really does hate his team. He's really a fan of the Giants. He really likes the Giants for some reason, and he's very invested into that organization as well. But guys, Hank, thanks again. Awesome on your podcast. Josh, thanks for stopping by. And everybody else, thank you so much for stopping by and listening. And this is Two Birds and a Third signing off.